1 hour Newsmaker show today with Congressman Tom Reed's media call being the first half hour, and the second half hour, Alfred State history professor Dr. Nick Waddy, the regular Wednesday guest. Congressman Tom Reed opened a media call talking about the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program and some issues that the Small Business Administration had been having with that program.
Obviously, there's some clunkiness. There's some obviously pressure on the system that has caused some concerns in regards to the load that's been placed on the system. And we've been working with our lending institutions, our banks, our credit unions, having regular teleconference calls with them to see what we can do to assist, to make that easier, to make that better. And one of the things that we heard from them, as well as our small businesses who we're talking to incessantly here at the office, and we've made ourselves available, like I said, 24/7. And one of the concerns that small businesses raise to us generally is, what happens with that $350 billion cap? Does this mean we have to rush to get into line? And if we miss our opportunity to be in line, are we going to miss this relief? And the message I'd like to deliver today to those small businesses is it's very clear to me that there's broad bipartisan support for upping that $350 billion limit. We are seeing the need for that to increase. I was very glad to see Mitch McConnell put out a public statement to that effect. I was very glad to see the President of the United States say that he would be seeking that additional relief from Congress if necessary. And I am proud to tell you, working with Problem Solvers Caucus members, those 50 members across the nation, there is broad support to up that ante of $350 billion so that we don't run into any turning off the valve because we hit that arbitrary number of $350 billion. So stay tuned as we figure out the logistics as Congress to answer that call of that demand. But I'm very confident in telling you that I can see in short order that concern about that limitation on the Paycheck Protection Program being addressed. I would also, obviously we've heard and put pressure on our banks to step up, take care of not only their customers but non-customers, and we encourage those customers to reach out to their bank, and the non-customers to reach out to a new bank or a credit union or the Small Business Administration themselves, if you would like. But I can honestly tell you, I think the banks and the credit unions are in a good position to address, as they've been essentially deputized by us in Congress and the Small Business Administration to process these loans, and to reach out to them and in preparation for that call, and not going to their branches, obviously, but going online or going to read.house.gov. We're trying to promote as many contact points for those banks and credit unions and those lending institutions. And when you reach out to them, already have compiled. Essentially, I see three critical pieces of information and documentation that small businesses and individuals who want to take advantage of this Paycheck Protection Program, and remember, this is also open to sole proprietors to also take advantage of. But to be prepared to, when you have that call and to communicate with those banks and credit unions, I would get your tax return from the previous year, the most recent tax return that you filed. I would have your most recent payroll tax return information. Typically, that's in Form 941. You can get that from your payroll processing company or what you file with the IRS in order to document your payroll. And again, that's Form 941 or a payroll report from your payroll processing company. And I would also go to Quicken or whatever you're doing in regards to managing your income and expenses, and printing out the most up-to-date documentation you have there to show what you're running in regards to expenses on a typical monthly basis. That type of information, if you compile it, I think will serve you well in regards to showing up in that meeting, in that appointment with that lending organization to be able to answer the questions that are required for this loan application, and also the documentation that is necessary in order to get the loan application reviewed and approved. That being said, I wanted to open it up to questions at this point in time. But if you could deliver that message to our businesses that we hear them, we're here 24/7 to assist them at read.house.gov. And if you get that documentation of those 3 items and you make that contact with the bank, I think you're going to be in the best position to be one of those successful loan applications that is in the system to get assistance to get you through this critical period of need that you rightfully need the assistance to receive.
Let's go to Dennis Phillips.
Dennis Phillips is with the Jamestown Post-Journal.
Dennis Phillips.
Hi, Tom. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Dennis. How you doing?
Good. Thank you. I guess my question would be, what should people think about some of the numbers that are coming out of New York State when it comes to the deaths related to the virus? On Saturday, there was a new record high, but then Sunday and Monday, the number fell into the 500s from like the 630 record. Today, there was a new record high of 730. What should people read in, I guess, to these numbers? What should people think about these numbers?
Yeah, well, I think it obviously is something we're all watching. I mean, I get daily feeds from our healthcare providers from across, from Buffalo to Rochester, Jamestown to Binghamton. It's about 3 million people that we're talking to, our hospitals and our providers and their networks on a daily basis. And what we're seeing in these numbers is exactly why we have to have a very healthy respect for this virus, and we have to continue to do that social distancing. We have to watch this virus as it proceeds along the lines Mother Nature has it programmed to do. And if we continue to work together to be strong in our response, not only as individuals, but also as entities, to make sure our workers, healthcare workers, have the protective equipment and and by way of ventilators, respirators, and capacity and personnel to address this, we can get through this. And we're seeing, some positive indications in the numbers. And even though those are real people, those are real numbers that are represented there, some of the projections that we saw at the beginning of this were much higher than what we're seeing today. So just got to keep blocking and tackling, putting our shoulder into it, and together, standing together, we're going to get through it.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep, thanks, Dennis.
All right, we're going to move tap into Greater Olean.
Hi, Congressman. How are you?
Good. How you doing today?
Good. So I kind of asked you this last week, but how do you think the consolidation of the elections and the expansion of the absentee ballot requirements will affect voter turnout? And how do you plan to adjust your campaign going forward?
So I can be honest with you. I have not even thought about my campaign since this all began. And so I really don't have any commentary in regards to that, other than, we got the campaign staff up and running. They're monitoring, making sure we qualified to be part of the election, and I'm confident that we're going to have an election in November, given the nature of where we see the virus going and the healthcare crisis and being. So, we'll deal with that down the road. Right now, it's about 24/7 standing up for the community, listening to the community, being accessible to the community, and advocate as loud as we possibly can to make sure that this area is getting taken care of.
Right, thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
All right, we're going to go over to Fred at WRFI.
That's the station over in Ithaca.
Hi, Tom. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there, Fred. I hope you're hanging in there, too.
I want to start out by saying a great big thanks to you and the staff for the work you're doing. This is and taking time out to talk to us as well.
Appreciate that.
So big thanks to everybody there. But my question is, on the stimulus plan, many of us understood that mortgages could be suspended for up to 3 months. And we heard that payments would be added on to the end of the loan. In other words, if there was 10 more years, it would be 10 years and 1 month and so on. I called Tompkins Trust locally here, and the loan officer said that feature adding on at the end of the loan is only for consumer loans like cars. And with a mortgage, the borrower's got to pay off the 3 months before the end of this year while continuing regular payments, and that's like a balloon payment. So other constituents I've talked to, and I've started calling around, feel that a balloon payment is not the right thing to be doing at this time. We're not in a 3-week problem. We're in a little bit longer. And retirees and us working class folks here in the 23rd, that's not going to be helpful. And I'm thinking, I looked up the $750 billion in the plan as loans for large and small businesses, includes banks. And do you think, could you have structured the stimulus plan to require banks to offer mortgage relief temporary without a balloon payment?
Yeah, we had that as part of the debate, and that was being considered in phase 3. But I think really where we're going to end up on this conversation is phase 4, recognizing that when phase 4 comes into focus, and that's probably going to happen here at the end of the month, maybe first 2 weeks of May is kind of the time frame I'm working off, talking to my colleagues in D.C. and having those constant communications with folks on the front line, as well as my colleagues in the Senate and the House. That this is going to be something that has to be addressed. And given the nature of how many we'll know at that point in time, how many folks have been put in this position, have had this relief, and we can quantify it, I think that's what we're looking at in regards to phase 4 recovery type funds that are going to be in the mix. And so I recognize, and I surely did advocate, and we're going to continue to advocate, that right now, given people with the massive layoffs, the economic crisis going off at the same time with the anxiety of the healthcare crisis, putting this type of burden on folks is something we should strive to alleviate in phase 4 because it's just a burden that's not sustainable. And so I hear loud and clear what you're saying, and I agree with the sentiment, and we're going to be a voice to provide that relief. But it also illustrates the magnitude of the problem, Fred, because you turned off the U.S. economy of $22 trillion overnight by no fault of any individual. This is Mother Nature doing this, and if you can imagine the unintended consequences of that relief, i.e., for mortgage payments, rent payments, health insurance premiums. I had a conference call with our health insurance providers across the district because I wanted to make sure they knew that we needed to get this money flowing from them to our providers, because a lot of our providers have been shut down because they're not on the front lines of the COVID-19. The ripple effect of this is impacting everyone in dollars worth of economic impact. It's huge, and when the cash doesn't go through the system, it puts so many of not just individuals, but the entire system at risk, from the bottom to the top and the top to the bottom. And that's where I'm looking at it for going into phase 4.
Right, but I'm trying to balance, as you all are we helping the banks out, or are we helping out the individual mortgage holders or other things like that? And I'm pushing for the second part here.
Yeah, no, the priority is the individuals. I'm going to be standing with the individuals, but recognize we need a functioning system that recognizes that the banks, the health insurance, the providers, the businesses, the individuals are all part of this ecosystem that has been put at risk because of this virus. It just, yeah. I guess I'm not advocating for the banks. I'm advocating for the individuals, but recognizing that they're part of an entire ecosystem.
That's true. If the banks don't work, the individuals don't get help. I agree.
That's the point right there. You said it better than I could, Fred.
I do have a broadband question.
Sure, please.
My friend's daughter is, of course, home from college and taking online courses starting yesterday. He also has 2 apartments in his house, legal, with 4 graduate students, and all 4 of them are actively working academic issues, and he has a home business with a business account at Spectrum, but he's rapidly overrunning the internet capability for those 5 students and his home business. And Spectrum wants to charge him a whole lot of money to raise the bandwidth rate. And I'm thinking, again, that $750 billion in business loans, Spectrum could cover, whatever little increase in cost to raise his broadband. And I'm sure other people are having that same conflict rate in a household where you got 1 or 2 a high school student and a college student home. Can you think about that as you look at phase 4 and push on the big internet companies to make more broadband capability available? It's there. You just turn it on. It's all there. And make some mention to them that they better do that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and absolutely that access to the broadband. This is definitely. I'm glad we made the investments we did. So I'm going to recognize the success we had prior to the virus of what we were doing in installing broadband in the district. But we had, the $10.3 million grant, for example, we got up in Yates County and elsewhere, and Armstrong over in Steuben County was putting in 2,300 miles of broadband wire to make it accessible. So those are all good things to build off of this success. And I would put on your radar, that is by the Problem Solvers Caucus, we came together in our Health Crisis Economic Revival package, and this was almost 4 weeks ago now. And some people scoffed at us when we put the infrastructure bill in there, because we saw over the horizon and the need to do the infrastructure bill as part of turning the lights back on for America's economy. And broadband is going to be critical, and I think is going to make its way into this $2 trillion, maybe $1 trillion, depending on where the numbers come down. That seems to be gaining momentum to rebuild America with an infrastructure bill that's going to be part of Phase 4, in my opinion, also.
It's the Newsmaker Show. I'm Brian O'Neill playing back a Congressman Tom Reed weekly media call. When we get back, Jason Sample, a Jamestown area radio reporter, will ask Congressman Tom Reed about COVID-19 legislation out of Washington. Stay with us.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
800-402-7117. 800-402-7117. 800-402-7117. Call right now. That's 800-402-7117.
Courts Auto Collision.
Hi, Bill.
Never seen an insurance job we both can't make money on yet.
Bill?
And yes, I still have a free loaner car.
Bill, I just called to...
Courts Auto Collision, Day Route 36, south of Canisteel, 698-9900. Online at McCourtsCollision.com.
Bill, for the first time in my life, you have left me speechless.
I am Bill McCourt.
Wow.
Back on the Newsmaker Show, and we have a Congressman Tom Reed weekly press call in this half hour. Starting at 8:30, it's going to be the regular guest, Dr. Nick Waddy from Alfred State College. Here's a question from Jason Sample from WFRA Radio in Jamestown. He's asking the congressman about COVID-19 legislation.
Following the news today out of Washington, the story is talking about the oversight of the recovery bill, COVID-19. Your thoughts, generally speaking, how important is it to have independent oversight? And then more specifically, this news about the demotion of Inspector General Glenn Fine. Obviously, Democrats in the House and the Senate are not pleased to learn that he's been demoted because that removes him as chair of the panel. Is that a cause for concern to know that you can influence the president being able to influence who sits on the oversight board?
Well, obviously, oversight is critical, and that is one thing. And you'll see a press release coming out from us today in our Problem Solvers Caucus. We sent a letter to our leadership, both Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy, saying Congress needs to continue to function. Still, we need to function in the sense of a debate, voting record, to be part of influencing the legislative process as we put Phase 4 together. But if you look at the letter closely, we also identify one of our key functions is oversight. And so I'm a firm believer that Congress needs to do its job. Congress needs to step up. And if it's legitimate oversight, not political partisanship, you'll find a partner in us day in and day out to do that. And so that is critical going forward. And the Inspector General, I'm going to defer to the White House, but obviously I have a lot of faith in the Inspector General's office. I've worked with them numerous times over the years, and I find them to be professional, dedicated public servants, and I will continue to defend them and their job that they do on behalf of Congress, as well as being an independent voice of accountability in the federal government.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
We're going to go to Greg Larson from WEOE.
WDOE is a news talk station in Dunkirk.
I know the topic has been discussed already, but I wanted to bring it back to your attention, the talk of possibly another stimulus package being passed during this COVID-19 pandemic. It's been brought up by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and I guess the president has been on board with the possibility of another stimulus package. Do you see another stimulus package being passed during this crisis?
I do. I was early on this position, in my opinion, and I know we want to, and we do. We want to see the dust settle. We want to know where the devastation has gone off, not only from a healthcare crisis perspective, but also the economic crisis. And we're going to be there in about 30 to 45 days. I think we'll have a lot more information as to where that devastation occurred, where the economy has been rattled, and where there's going to be need for not only repairing and reviving that economy, but how we reignite the economy going forward. And that's what all Phase 4 is about. And I think you're going to see parameters of this that are going to be significant, are going to be large, and there's going to be no nook or cranny that isn't going to need for us to have a hard look taken at it in order to make sure that it's stable and strong and get the economy going again and get people back to work in a safe fashion. And that's the other piece of this that will be in Phase 4 is how do we demonstrate as a government that it's safe enough to open up the economy, turn back on the lights, and get people back to work. And so I think on the healthcare side of it, you're going to have a debate about how do you establish testing, how do you learn from the existing situation so that the supply chains to our healthcare system are there to take care of the base capacity needs, the surge capacity needs. If an outbreak goes on again, we should be prepared and recognize that Mother Nature is going to put the virus in a situation potentially in September, October, that we've seen with other viruses of this nature, that we got to be prepared to address that in our community too. And so that is another bucket of Phase 4 that's going to have to be addressed: the serological testing, the base testing for the virus, and the ability to deliver the necessary medical equipment and supplies and personnel to those areas that potentially could be at risk of going off again in a hotspot fashion.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
All
thank
right.
you.
Well, Terry Frank.
Terry Frank is also a Jamestown area radio reporter.
I wanted to follow up a little bit on helping out the small businesses. I've been watching on television, and a number of them who are stressed already have faced difficulties getting either online or on the telephone somebody to deal with to take care of their problem. Have you been hearing much about this in the district, and what are you telling people if they are telling you that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are hearing that. We're having regular calls with our small businesses, our chambers, and we've done numerous teletown halls, Facebook Live events, and we are hearing that. And it shows you that the system is overwhelmed right now. Obviously, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, and concern out there, and rightfully so. And that's one of the messages why I believe this $350 billion increase that is going to be necessary. I'm glad to see the powers to be recognizing that we should easily in Congress come together to relieve kind of that pressure point that a lot of people are saying. I got to get in. I got to get my loan processed because you're going to hit that $350 billion number sooner rather than later, and I don't want to miss it. And that's why we're already advocating. Let's just increase that, bring some confidence to people that this resource is going to be there. And so what we offer them is, one, guidance when they reach out to us at read.house.gov. We say, get these forms put together: your tax return, your income and expense report, and your payroll report, that 941 payroll tax return. And get that together now so you don't have to have multiple contacts with the bank when you have that exchange back and forth. Have that information pretty much readily available when you, quote unquote, virtually walk in, so to speak. We're also providing, at read.house.gov contact information to folks. A lot of folks were under the impression that you had to go to the Small Business Administration to get the relief. That's just not the case. We, in particular, offered that banks, credit unions, local lenders, people that have that relationship with them can be a resource too during this time, because essentially they've been deputized by the SBA to be those partners. And so we're just in trying to connect people. We're trying to encourage them to keep at it and when necessary, we've been involved in situations to try to push through the log jams of paperwork problems that the bureaucracy at times can create.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Terry.
That is who we have on the call today, so we are all set.
Well, thank you, guys. I appreciate you bearing with us, and just be safe out there, and we're standing together. We're going to get through it. Thank you.
Congressman Tom Reed's weekly media call there. Like those shows, you get a lot of questions in from a lot of different reporters, a lot of viewpoints. And coming up next on our 1 hour Newsmaker show, our regular Wednesday guest, Dr. Nick Waddy, will be with us shortly. Stay with us.